Hi everyone, Rob Skeen here. It gives me great pleasure to introduce my next guest, Mr. Tom Panos, an absolute legend and guru in the industry throughout Australia, a man who inspires, motivates and educates us real estate agents on a daily basis and creating an amazing legacy in the same process. Well done, Tom. Good to see you.
I love that intro. Awesome.
Thank you. So Tom, we're going to discuss today your 3 top tips for property buyers looking at perhaps going to auction or even just approaching a for sale, a private treaty.
Right.
What would your 3 top tips would be for them?
To a buyer?
To a buyer.
Tip number 1, Robert, would be don't try and pick the top, don't try and pick the bottom. And if you're buying, you want to be picking the bottom. So here's the deal. What happens is the only way you know that the market has bottomed is when the market's gone up. Right. Because you actually can look backwards and say that was the bottom back then. So I say that strategy of trying to buy at the bottom is not a very good one, because the only way you'll know the market's gone up, it's too late. And the worst part about it is when you're buying when the market goes up, it's actually not so good as a buyer because there's less listings on the market. That's what causes the marketplace to go up.
Right.
And in addition to that, interest rates go up when the market goes up. So I would say to a buyer, make your decision based on your life, not on the market. So tip number 1 is make a decision on your life. Markets, you can't win those.
Yeah. Good advice. It's a bit like gambling in a sense, isn't it? People, hesitating, should I buy, shouldn't they? Don't. The market goes up, they get left behind, and
correct.
They're paying more in the future.
Correct.
Great.
Okay. Number 2, Robert, I would say treat it like a project. Don't treat it like buying your Red Rooster that night or buying a plasma screen. And by treating it like a project, I mean it requires time and effort. If you haven't got the time and effort, outsource it to people that do it. People like yourself are in the business of actually handling those issues. And the reason why I say it is that you do it wrong, it can cost you 20, 30, 40,000 overpayment. You do it right, you can save yourself 20, 30, 40 grand. So the actual difference in making a bad decision to a good decision, it could end up being an 80 grand decision when you look at it.
That's it could be a huge mistake for somebody.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah. So Robert, I would say if you're a buyer out there, basically end up doing a bachelor's degree in house values in the area, right? If you're not prepared to actually do the course yourself, outsource it to someone to do it. And what it looks like is going into properties, looking at what's sold, looking at the comparable sales, so you can make an educated decision. Education comes through comparison.
Yeah, that's great. It actually reminds me of that old saying, the moment you start making money on property depends on the price that you paid for it.
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's where the profit's made. The profit's made in the purchase.
Yeah. Great. Good, great stuff. Okay, and our 3rd tip?
And the 3rd tip, I would say, is I'm biased. I like to buy. I like to pay a little bit more, but buy in an area where everyone's buying, because I know that when I'm a seller and being someone that auctions and is heavily involved in real estate, I've seen that if you actually go off and buy a property and you buy it at an amazing price and it's a dead set bargain and no one else wanted to buy it and it's in the middle of nowhere, you feel really excited, but life's about to get really bad because there's no growth. and what happens is you have problems sometimes even renting it out. So it's just something that looks very attractive and seductive at the time of the purchase, and it unfolds to being a pretty bad experience. And when you sell it, generally you sell it for less than what you paid for. You lose all your changeover costs. So I would suggest buying within close proximity to major cities. I would say that. I know I'm being biased and I'm thinking Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, up to around 10, 12 k's of those CBDs.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with you, Tom. I've seen that a lot. Where people bought elsewhere, and they ended up going backwards in 10 years' time.
Correct.
So, well, Tom, thank you very much for your pearls of wisdom. We really appreciate your time today. If people want to follow you, is it best to follow you on Twitter or your blog?
Twitter, Facebook, or tompanos.com.au.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.